Hello, and welcome to another episode of Scavenger Life. This is number 147 at scavengerlife.com. And I feel like every time we record this, we're on our way to get an airplane.
Yeah, lately we've been traveling a lot, and as many of you know, we are currently on a 5-week work/vacation, and currently we're in New York City. We're here for 3 nights, going to a wedding.
A very insane wedding.
Yeah, one of those weddings where like someone literally spent $100,000 on this wedding.
Yeah, that happened.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable.
It was great food. It was like
it was at a Michelin star restaurant. Like that's how crazy it was.
Yep.
If anyone knows what that means.
Right.
So that was an experience.
Yeah, but, you know, some people that's important to them. To us, we would never even imagine that. But hey, that's...
You know what I splurge on?
What?
Taking an Uber to the airport.
Yeah.
In New York.
That's true. Yeah.
That's a new thing we've discovered.
Yeah. Okay, so our numbers for this past week. So we made about $1,000, a little bit more, about $1,060 or something. And that, for many of you know that follow our numbers every week, because we're kind of crazy enough to share them because we feel that it helps kind of push conversations forward because we're putting, you know, our cards on the table. So $1,000 is low for us, but at the same time, you have to remember we've been away and, you know, normally we put our store in vacation mode and people buy. This time our store's not in vacation mode. We just changed the handling time for all the items. And the handling time was 30 business days.
Yeah.
So to me, instead of thinking we didn't make a lot of money, I'm thinking we made an incredible amount of money for people buying items knowing that it would take 30 business days to ship.
Now that number is after we did have to refund a couple people because people... You know, obviously, they're like, I don't want to wait that long. That happens sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, just like when we go on vacation, you know, we email these people and we're like, just to remind you.
Yeah.
This is not going to get to you for, and so there were, I think, 2 or 3 people that said, I didn't see that. That's way too long. Yeah. I need my money back. Is most people don't answer at all. So we're like, okay, that's fine. But there are even people that are like, oh, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
I saw that. I can wait.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Which is great.
So
nice.
And the good thing is that, you know, as our trip continues, it gets fewer and fewer days to when we're going to ship. And then what we're doing is every week we change the handling time for a week sooner. So
yeah. So today I don't have time to do it today, but when we land, I'm going to change the handling time to 20 business days.
Right.
So
and then the week after that,
it'll be less. Yeah.
So, and that way it's going to be easier and easier to sell and people won't be worried. And, and for us, that's important. And I don't know how to say this. I'm always really down on Amazon FBA, but there was a guy that came into the comments. He's anonymous, but he started talking about his Amazon FBA experience. Mm-hmm. And he actually engaged me and started giving me real numbers and specifics. And it actually, my curiosity's kind of piqued, you know, like I'm kind of interested because what he's saying is that, you know, when we go to those yard sales and we see those like new in box, like kind of like Walmart stuff, like, you know, a cooker, you know, whatever, like a barbecue brush, but it's in the box. And we normally kind of skip over a lot of that stuff. He says he buys that stuff, sends it to the Amazon warehouse, and people buy it. So he's buying this stuff for $1 like we do, but he sends it to Amazon, and then it sells for $16, you know?
But with all granted, there's always fees. There's fees with eBay. There's fees with Amazon. But the Amazon, like, warehouse and fulfillment fees, like, is there a profit there? I mean, rather than just letting it sit on my shelf?
I've looked at its numbers, and I talked to Chris, a coin guy, who's equally skeptical, and he even said this in his podcast. As long as you're not paying, you know, as long as you're tripling your profits. So, you know, if you buy for $1 and sell for at least over 10, then the fees are still good. I mean, obviously, if you want to buy for $1 and sell for $30, but the reason why it's interesting is because we do travel a lot. I can see how selling on Amazon FBA would be amazing.
Because they do it all for you, basically.
And I look at how, at Ryan from Online Selling Experience, I would never do his business model where he's spending $20,000 up front for inventory to make $10,000. Like but I like the idea of, he travels around sometimes, buys stuff, and mails it out at his hotel room, right? And I'm thinking, like, for our traveling lifestyle, that'd be pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Like, if you could travel somewhere, buy some stuff, and just
ship it right to Amazon.
Yeah.
But you got to have your little, like, label printer with you and stuff like that.
Yeah, or just pay a little bit more by sending it to I think Amazon has a deal with UPS, so...
Oh, I meant, don't they have to put, like, their own little UPC codes and stuff like that?
Yeah, I need to look. Ryan has a whole post about it where he did this, and he took pictures of him in the hotel room.
Right.
I bet that they had
They
some
brought
kind
a printer. It's interesting.
But, again, like anything, the only way that would work if you're making at least $1,000 profit a week is if you're, sending a lot of stuff in.
As we always say, it's the numbers, the bulk numbers.
Yeah. But for us, this is how we do it with eBay. And again, it's all about just being transparent to the buyer, and people are willing to wait. And it's awesome. And so it was kind of a slow week. Today,
oh my God, today was crazy.
Which is the start of another week, so it doesn't count for that last week where we made $1,000. We've made $600 just today,
and it's not even evening time.
Right,
yet.
it's 4 p.m. here. Yeah, it's New York, and this feels like how it feels like during the holiday season, where people are just starting to buy.
Right, it's a good feeling. It's like, oh, finally.
Yeah, so we hope that it keeps up. And we couldn't really control when we traveled this year because we have a job at the end of the month, and that's why we're away. But I hope that we don't miss out on all those holiday sales. And,
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, that's starting early.
Yeah.
If those are holiday sales.
So I hope it's been good for other people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now I want to also mention that eBay this week has really been having a lot of like technical issues that people have been talking about on the blog.
Yeah.
Now, we haven't had any of those things.
No, like people were saying there was a big hoopla last week where people were like, I can't sign in. My store's deleted. I mean, and I was laughing because I was like, normally it's been slow this summer, but we were selling a bunch that day. So I'm like, that's ironic and weird.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely probably would have felt the same way as other people who were locked out of their store.
Right.
But I guess it only affected a certain percentage of sellers.
Yeah. I mean, I probably would not have been panicking because we were on another job, and I was like, I can't think about it.
And then other people were saying that I guess they list with the mobile app.
The mobile app, yeah.
And they said the mobile app wasn't letting them list things. And then someone else was saying that when they tried to put tracking into eBay, eBay wasn't accepting tracking, which
is weird.
And I understand, I understand why people get frustrated, and people have been pushing back where I'm just like, everyone just chill out. I mean,
I get the frustration.
I hear people like, you can't just totally chill out and just be a doormat.
Because you're trying to run your business and pay your bills.
But I guess it's just a balance between, do what you have to. Send that email to eBay,
call them.
Spend an hour on the phone and call them and let them know. I mean, decide you're going to sell on another platform. I mean, definitely make the decision you have to as a business owner. But at some point, too, you have to be like, you have to have some kind of faith in eBay, because if their site doesn't work, they can't make its money. So they want it to work.
They want it to work. Yeah. Yeah, it's frustrating, especially because we've all noticed that call times before we left for our trip, I spent an hour on hold. I hear you guys. It sucks so bad. But I was sitting at my computer. I had my headphones on. I was doing a million other things. But yeah, it does suck.
And, and this is just one of those to share that, we are not invincible against these kind of crazy eBay things. We discussed how we got a return, an automatic return, and the buyer, bought like a faucet from us. And he returned it saying it was defective, meaning we have to pay
for the shipping, the shipping.
But then in the message he says, this is not defective, it's just not the color I want. So we were like, okay, we're going to
dispute the case. It's called dispute the return. So we disputed it.
Where basically then we ask eBay to come in, read its messaging, and make a decision on this. And eBay said that this guy was right.
Which is insane. I mean, Jay doesn't think I should call, but I do want to call because I'm like, to me, that's really not fair because why is there the ability to dispute a return with very clear evidence that the person's misusing returns?
Right. I mean, the only thing I can think of is just eBay's like, we can't piss buyers off because we need them to come back, so we're going to make sellers eat some of this stuff. I mean, I don't know. It's just, like Ryan said, I'm just like, let's just eat this one. I mean, like, what do you...
Yeah, what can you do?
Like, I just imagine you calling them, spending an hour on the phone. They're going to say, well, it went to the final arbitrator who's our manager or something, and he made the final or she made the final choice. And they're like, there's nothing we can do. And then it makes you more angry. And it's like...
I will say this. I called about this case before the case was closed last week. And they said, this woman was really nice. She gave me a credit for the shipping, the return shipping. It was like $7. Yes. And she gave me my final value fee back.
On the
spout, yes. But I still had to refund him his original, $10 shipping. Right.
And we got it.
A defect, right? No, it wasn't a defect.
Anyway, but...
Yeah, it's just... Yeah.
You see, I don't like to get into this because it just starts becoming, very tangled. And I agree with everyone on the blog is that this eBay is not making this any better, and I'm trying to work with the new system, but they're forcing even nice guys like me to have to start spending brain power on it's almost a labyrinth, and so it's unfortunate, and I'm hoping eBay listens to this or they're hearing people's complaints and maybe they balance what they're trying to do,
Yeah, it's like you said, it's unfortunate because I feel like we're wasting so much time. And you have the choice to be like, I don't care, just do the refund, Yeah. But then it's like this all this other stuff with it.
The good thing is if you're new and hearing this, that what we're talking about are 3% of our sales.
Yeah, it's so small.
Are causing these kind of mental issues.
I wouldn't even say that much. I mean, it's a tiny amount.
And that's why, out of, the 100 and it's 50 items we might sell in a month, it might be one that's causing us a problem. So that's why we try and firewall it. It's just one thing. Everything else is fine. We're still making money.
People are great. They love their items.
We like anything, we don't often talk about many of our good experiences where buyers even email us and thank us and, So that's why we always try and say, well, maybe this one, even though we don't believe that it was our fault, it's just the way it is.
Move on. And moving on.
Yeah, and moving on.
So I got a note from eBay this week. I think it was September 7th. And it was my 15-year eBay anniversary. Right. So I have been on eBay since September 7th, 1999.
Yeah. And,
it's crazy.
And that's always a little bit of an arbitrary number because that just means that's when you sign up for an account.
Yeah, I just logged in.
There were many years where you were inactive.
Not selling. But they're just you've had the same account for so long. Not that they give you anything. They're just cool.
But that is pretty amazing. It's many of us remember when the internet was very new, and so it's amazing that we're into a period where you can say you've been on a website for 15 years.
Yeah, you're this is something I've done for this long. It's bizarre. It's strange. It's a strange feeling. It's cool though. I was shocked.
Yeah.
So at this wedding, we actually met a friend who I had been talking to over email, and she actually is trying to make a living on Etsy.
She's a friend of yours.
She's a friend of my brother's. Who was at the wedding.
It was his wedding.
Yeah, it was my brother's wedding.
And so we had kind of talked about her because she sells on Etsy, and the funny thing is she may be hearing this podcast right now.
Yes, and it's really funny because she sells on Etsy, not on eBay. She said the summer was so slow. So it wasn't just, everyone's the technical problems with eBay and the hack and blah, blah, blah. And I'm I think it's slow for everybody. Yeah. And she said, she said it was really slow on Etsy.
But she's a newish kind of seller, she sounded like kind of a hobby seller.
that moved up.
Wanting to make it more of a full-time.
Yeah.
This is because her and her husband just got pregnant.
Yeah.
And so she's, in the beginnings of being pregnant, and she's thinking like this would be a perfect. And this is kind of like what we did that podcast a couple weeks ago, where we were like the women of eBay.
Right, exactly. And it's just, it's similar with Etsy, especially with Etsy, because Etsy is a lot of crafters. When we were at the conference that we were doing the video for, there were people from Etsy that were on some of the panels, and they were talking about like that Etsy is a huge majority women. Like the percentage was crazy. It was like, whatever, it's 75% women or something. So that's interesting because I think it's true.
It seems like Etsy and Pinterest, like there's probably a very strong crossover among those two worlds, where eBay's more of like a weird flea market
what the hell
kind
is
of,
eBay?
But I was able to ask her why she doesn't sell on eBay, because that we feel like eBay has more traffic,
right?
And she she's very aware that eBay seems to be of a bigger marketplace, but she seemed to feel comfortable like that was a niche. She understood that there was a different kind of buyer there.
Yes.
It looking for different kind of things.
You know? I think that that's true. But then again, it's really all about focusing on the platform you want and just really, working that platform. Because for me, I just can't split it. It never ever works. You just have to go for one. You feel that your customers are good customers and they make sense to you, and that is what you have to do.
I just loved it because she was, someone who was young.
Yes.
Covered in tattoos.
Stylish.
And was just like, we could actually talk to her about this kind of stuff, because I just find like younger people are not thinking like this. Or at least we don't run into a lot of young people.
No, not a lot of young people are thinking like, I don't have to work for someone. Like I find that to be rare, It's rare with all people, I think. So it's rare to find people at any age that think that that's okay. So that was really fun. Like, actually, there was a dinner before the wedding and then the wedding. We talked to her both nights. We're like, so let's talk about selling online. And then my mom cornered her and she's like, let me tell you about my store. It was really funny.
And we were surrounded by kind of swankier people. It's like we said, it's a very fancy, it's wedding. So it was
nice
funny,
to connect with someone on the same level.
Funny, diverse world that we were in. So on the blog, I really liked this quote that someone gave. It's Brian said on the blog. He was, I guess we were just talking to someone new that was asking questions, and he says, because I guess him and his wife and some of his family, they sell together, and they seem to sell a lot. They sell mainly clothes.
Clothes, yeah.
And what his advice was is great. Don't sell cheap junk. That's all we used to sell when we first started, and it felt like we had built a sweatshop for ourselves.
Yes.
And that's so true. I say the same kind of thing, but he really put it in the right kind of words. I mean, you can find stuff and sell it for $5 if you want.
And people do it all day long on eBay.
But the thing is, it feels like that. You have to sell so many $5 items that it will feel like a sweatshop, because it is just constant. You're just having to...
Well, you just have to pump it out, because for $5, like all the work you put in to get that item.
Right.
I bought like the pants I'm wearing, they were $6 on eBay.
God bless that person, but they totally undersold that item.
They undersold the item, and which is fine, great, good for me for finding that. But all the time they put into measuring it, they took good photos.
They answered questions.
I asked questions about it. Oh my God.
I mean,
$6?
Right.
Jesus Christ.
It just reminds me that, like I always say, it takes as much time to list an item that's going to sell for $1,000 as it will for $5. And so it's really, that's, we don't have any control over the eBay technical problems. We don't have any control over like grumpy buyers. What we do have control over is like being good, the best scavengers we can, and scavenging the stuff we can for the cheapest and selling it for the most. And that's really where this lifestyle comes into play, is when you can find something as cheap as possible and sell it for as much as possible.
and do it in a quality way. Don't just take one photo. That stuff drives me crazy when I'm shopping on eBay.
I mean, I think and to be fair, we did not, spring into this having this perfect store.
No, not at all.
We definitely built a sweatshop for ourselves for a little while. Where we were, working really hard and really not making the kind of money we needed to make. Right. But we weren't afraid to start doing those experiments that I like to talk about. Yeah. Where we start selling, can we sell this jacket for $100?
Well, I remember finding really nice wingtips. I think that's where it started. And I was looking up other people's wingtips, and I'm like, man, these people are selling wingtips for $60 a pair. I gotta do that. So I just changed my price, and that's where it all started. It was like, oh okay. I gotta find better stuff now.
Yeah. So I don't know. I feel like a seller has to have that experience where they just start realizing maybe I can sell this stuff for a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly.
But again, I mean, that's why we always stress having a larger inventory, because that gives you the padding to be able to be patient, because you have more items on the table and there's more things for people to pick.
More variety,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a bit of a story that I had. So we were in San Francisco it's last week, and we were working. We were kind of just I put a picture where we were working. It was kind of it was in this big warehouse on a pier, and you could look at the Golden Gate Bridge.
It was amazing. It was great. I was blown away.
But one of the days where we were just kind of testing our equipment, I took a long walk. I took a 3-mile walk through San Francisco, which 3 miles doesn't sound like a lot, but in a city, 3 miles...
It's like a lot of this.
I'm going through multiple neighborhoods, all the ones that people think about, Fisherman's Wharf, Chinatown, going through the Mission.
Just all over the place.
The fancy parts where it's all hilly. I think what I love about places like that is that, these kind of creative towns have started taking their old warehouses, their old factories, and they've just totally transformed them, I mean, some of it's a yuppie kind of yoga studios, but people are turning them into apartments, but some of them are kind of newer factories where they're making newer kind of products. And I just think that's kind of what we all do here, or at least what I feel like we try and do, where we're trying to take stuff that is old, things that used to be valuable in the old days in a certain way, and you're taking this stuff out of context and giving it new kind of value. And it's the same thing, and it's not sad. It's good.
Why would you call it sad?
I mean, I don't know. Some people
sad.
Well, some people I can imagine are these old factories. It used to have textiles, or they were old canneries, in San Francisco. That was a big thing. They had canneries, and they're no longer canneries, and it used to employ 500 people or something. I mean, now at least those buildings have been turned into something else. Yeah. There's new kind of workers there. There's new things, and that's good. And obviously, it's very easy. Not easy, but this is happening in Brooklyn. And,
I was going to say Brooklyn.
It's New York, and San Francisco, different parts of even Houston, where I'm from, Austin. Yeah. It seems to be these kind of cultural areas. But where we live... There's a lot of that too, where you walk around or more likely drive around, and there's rundown chicken houses,
farms,
old factories, and it looks really like the apocalypse. Yeah. And it's like this, I think, in a lot of its rural areas, and I think that's what we're trying to do where we live. We're fixing up that one house. Right. We're talking about
doing other things later.
Buying a business, I mean, buying a storefront, because they really are becoming really affordable because everyone's overlooking this stuff. Yeah. So I just think it's just neat to think we could do the same thing in other parts of it. And people who are hearing this, if you live in one of those non-hip places. Right.
Well, that's the thing. Those hip places that you think of, parts of Brooklyn, industrial parts of San Francisco, et cetera, they were not cool parts of town.
Right.
And they're only cool parts of town because somebody was like, I'm going to buy that building, I'm going to retrofit it, and I'm going to give cheap rent or whatever to artists.
Right.
That is the only way it becomes that way.
I mean, it seems like we have a small contingent of punks that listen to our podcasts here, and many of them, especially if they're over 40, would understand this because a lot of them are the front lines.
Right,
you know?
exactly.
They're the ones that want cheap rent, so they're willing to live in these kind of desolate parts of town, but then they transform it into something super cool.
Culturally transform it.
And then, of course, the sad story is then they raise all the rents to where they can't live there anymore.
Well,
and then they have to move to the next.
Man, and you know what? That is happening. Like I was thinking of Austin because I'm like, it's still cheap in Austin, but I bet people complain in Austin and it's not affordable.
It's not like it was. Being from Texas, it's not like it was when I was in college in the early to mid 90s. I mean, I wish
dirt cheap. Yeah.
I wish I had been smart enough to invest.
But if you think of but if you think about how the culture was there in the 90s, it was very minimal instead of like what you're saying where it's like you can, have all these great businesses there now.
Well, I think that's what, I guess to kind of like bring this full a circle. I guess what my point is to tie it to what we all do on eBay is that what we try and do is we're trying to make this money on eBay. And we aren't just trying to pay our bills and be done. And eBay is just like kind of a cool job, but it's ultimately a job just to pay the bills and like keep the bankers the bankers off of our doorstep. Yeah. I mean, we're trying to take our money and think of like, what can you do with it's money to do other cool things, And I feel like maybe there might be a lot of people hearing this and they live in these kind of areas we're talking about. Not cool, hip towns, but in the rural areas or a city's
suburban areas.
Suburban area, like, I wonder, I love this idea of like eBay could be an engine or any online selling where people could make its money scavenging, but then they rebuild where they live. Mm-hmm. And I guess this is the part where we aren't unclear about is that if you were to buy one of these storefronts, like an old building that it used to be, the cool place that hired people and now is like all run down. Nothing. If you could buy that cheap, what could you do with it?
Well, and the question is, we always talk about how I do not want to run a brick and mortar store.
Right.
I do not want to have to be there. I do not I'm not holding office hours. Like, that is not what I like to do. But how do you recruit talented people to have a creative outlet, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a cool, funky store?
Yeah, like if you're in a neighborhood that's really run down, you can't do everything online, so someone has to start running businesses that bring some kind of culture, bring people together, whether that be a restaurant. And I don't know. Yeah. I guess I'm just thinking like, how do you turn an eBay business into then reviving
where you live
and kind of bringing that full circle, that whole thing of like, you're bringing money into a community and then reinvesting it in the community itself, and then you start bringing everything back to life. Right. Maybe
those are the questions we're asking ourselves.
Maybe because we were in San Francisco for a week, I'm thinking like a true hippie,
Yeah. Well, no, that does not sound like hippie thinking to me. In a way, that sounds like... oddly, it sounds like a developer to me, like a real estate developer. Yeah. Like, that's actually the opposite of what you just said. Right. But it is how places like New York became, like, you go down to Soho. Dude, when my parents were, younger than us and lived in Soho, they're like, this is the worst, horrible, place. But all the artists were here because it was cheap. Yeah, nobody can afford a place in Soho now, Not that you want that, but it became a wanted area because of that.
But that's why we do this podcast, because we like to try and, because there's other podcasts and YouTube videos about eBay, and it's all cool. But I just feel like it's important for those of us that are selling on eBay and we know how to do it, that we think about, are there different things we want to do with all these profits we're making on eBay beyond just paying the bills.
Well, I think what's funny too, it reminds me of like, I'm at this wedding. I'm with all my relatives, which are not very many, but just talking to people about what we do, and it's like, when other people see us and they're like, oh, they sell on eBay, it's like, okay, yeah, but I'm not just like, that's not just like the end game.
Right.
I'm trying to like do other things with that and
For
not
sure.
have to go to an office,
Yeah. I mean, this is definitely a to be continued kind of topic because...
Well, we talk about this stuff every day.
I mean, it all comes down to action. So,
yeah.
Like, that's why we bought that little old house. Let's see if we can't bring some people to come stay in it, to live in the area,
Yeah. And, sort of revitalize a little chunk of the county into something cool. And, we live in a very beautiful place.
Yeah. It's just... But... just like a lot of America, just all the industrial dropped out.
It's gone.
Starting in like the 80s.
Yeah.
It's basically gone and just, there isn't. So I feel like when I was walking through San Francisco, I just saw how this was a community that has transformed what was probably blight or very depressing, images of what used to be.
Yeah.
And now it's like they've taken it and they've created into something that is like the new stuff,
like
like eBay itself. I mean, eBay comes from that area.
I mean, also you got to think about it. Like San Francisco is one of it's turning into, unfortunately, one of the most expensive cities to live in because people want to be there because the culture is there, know, and that's what people turn a crazy city into when it's not like that. Hopefully,
culture. Okay. We have questions that people have sent in. You can go to scavengerlife.com and on the right sidebar, kind of down below, there's a little form where you can send us a question. And we answer them every week But you can also, if you want your questions answered quickly, just go on the blog and leave a comment.
Jay's very good at getting back to people.
Yeah,
He's very, very prolific in answering.
I do. It's my best to help anybody else, but there's a lot of people who are starting to jump on the blog too and answer things better than I ever could. And like I say, I'm always learning things about the blog. Like that guy that came on and was willing to spend time with me and explain to me and everybody else about Amazon FBA. Totally. And I actually have some things to say about that maybe next time. But it's very interesting. So anyway, these are the questions that people have emailed us in. Okay. What settings do I need to keep the percentage of non-payers from bidding on my items? Right now, it is almost one or two people that I guess is mess me around when they bid. It doesn't matter if I request PayPal payment within 48 hours. The last buyer with 2040 feedback and one complaint from a seller for non-payment says she'll pay me when she's ready to. Next week, maybe.
At least she wrote back.
Usually they don't. eBay does not offer me many filters to choose from. What am I doing wrong? And this is from near to perfect eBay. I guess that's
their eBay username,
So, do you want to try and answer this? Or?
No, I want you to try to answer.
Okay. I mean, number one is, this is one reason why we say we don't do auctions. The idea of an auction is that anyone can bid. You can say if someone has two non-paying.
Yeah, you can set it to be if you have 2 unpaid item strikes. I think that's the minimum.
Yeah, it really eBay puts a bar really, really high for you to be able to block people.
Yeah.
So really, it's open to anyone, and we've definitely had those experiences where we put up an iPhone or a bar of silver, and then it gets bid up, and then the last person that buys who's been driving the price up is someone with 1 feedback or zero feedback, and they're from Malaysia. I mean, that's actually happened, and then they don't pay. We don't hear from them. It takes a week to cancel the item, and then you have to relist it again. I mean, so we get that. So number one is there are not a lot of filters. You aren't doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do. You're helpless when it comes to stopping those deadbeats from, bidding on your auction. So what we say is buy it now.
We buy it now.
Do the research, find a strong price, and then just do buy it now, so that way
And
they have to pay right away.
if you want, I mean, we obviously love make offer, and people don't have to pay right away with make offer, but we like make offer on things over like $30 to $50.
Right,
so.
but if you're worried about getting these deadbeats, just don't put make offer.
Yeah.
Put a strong price on it, and that's the price they have to pay.
That's the advantage.
But I mean, it just might be too. You're having one of those issues where you're just having a couple bad people.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that sell only auctions, and they're selling all the time.
And they're making a living, so they do it. Okay, so this next question is: I'm good at picking only the best quality women's vintage clothing, but I stall out on listing because it's so boring. My question for you is, if you had a small spandex workshop and the ability and experience to design and create garments in spandex, which would you focus on for income generation? Making versus finding/reselling? And that's from Kitty.
This is what people struggle with sometimes. They're like, I like to make,
Stuff.
book covers, and I like to make pickled peppers and sell them online. We've talked about, we want to, people say we'll sell our honey online. But I think for some it's reason, and it is unfortunate, people who make things don't really often do well on eBay because people aren't willing to pay the amount of work you have to put in to make these items.
You can't charge enough.
Right, because if it takes you, 5 hours to make something, or even 1 hour, you have to sell that item for much more.
Yeah.
Because you've invested so much time into those things. That's why the finding, the scavenging, and is reselling works, because you're scavenging things for a couple bucks and selling them for $30+ and just that's an incredible profit.
Yeah, it's tough. Because the whole making things, I mean, she's talking about having like a little workshop and everything. I mean, making stuff takes a lot of time.
But we love that idea. I mean, we wish it could work, and you know what? It does work for some people. So now it goes to just having passion. I mean, if you have a vision of making spandex items, clothes, and that's what you love to do, give it a shot.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you can try different places for stuff like that. You can try Etsy, because that's for, handmade items. And you can try eBay. I mean, depending on what kind of, like, this person's saying garments, I'm assuming it's like some kind of athletic clothing or something, but, that stuff is, people pay a lot of money for that kind of clothing.
But then it gets into the whole, you're making items, so it's about quality control, and it's about trying to create a brand. That's a good thing about selling stuff that we all scavenge. Sometimes if you find things that have a brand that people are already trying to find, we haven't had to do any kind of advertising because people already try and find Nike and whatever, that kind of stuff.
So that's the competition there. Okay, so Rachel, mom of 3, says, I just listened to your new podcast and you talk a lot about global shipping. For a total newbie to global shipping, can you explain to me how global shipping works? So basically, we did do a whole episode about global shipping, so you can search for it on the sidebar.
And we will link to it on this blog.
Yes, we can link to it. But basically, global shipping is a program by eBay where when you sign up for it, instead of shipping directly to the person in another country, you ship to a warehouse in Kentucky and they ship it for you internationally. Now, if you get it to Kentucky with no issues, it's marked as delivered, you're completely covered. If it breaks on the way to Australia, eBay covers it. If they leave you negative feedback and don't open a case, they will take that feedback away. If they open a case saying this never got delivered, eBay completely takes care of it. They almost don't even tell you that there's a case open. I love it.
Yeah, and global shipping program is one of these. It's like a rail topic when you talk to other eBayers. Some people hate it because it costs a lot more, because the buyer is basically paying up front for priority,
for customs
shipping,
fees,
for customs, for insurance. So all the prices are up front and they have to pay it all.
Yeah.
I mean, which is a little weird to me because when you ship something international, they may not have to pay as much up front, but very often they have to then pay customs when they
it gets
pick
there.
it up, and there's delivery fees.
And they hate that.
But then some people say, well, my country doesn't always do customs, so I want to take that chance. And then for us, it's like, well, you're making us take a chance because there isn't always tracking on some of these kinds of things. Like we just we didn't email it. We shipped something to Botswana in Africa. And it's not under the global shipping program, but we were willing to take the chance, and we did it priority. So it had a tracking number.
And I put insurance on it.
But the tracking number just stopped because the tracking isn't guaranteed.
Yeah.
So now the buyer is emailing us like, the tracking stops, it's lost, you need to give me my money back. And he opened up a case. And now we're having to say, well, at least give it a month.
Yeah.
So, because it might get hung up in customs. But at this point, it makes us feel helpless because we're hoping this guy's honest.
Right.
Because we hope he gets it and admits he gets it and everything's okay. He could get the item and say he didn't get it, because we have no tracking anymore.
Right.
And then we have to open up, an insurance case and hope that the insurance pays. If Botswana was in the global shipping program, we would just say, call eBay.
Yeah.
And then eBay
would deal with it.
Deals with
we
that.
wouldn't have to deal with any of that. Because I would have successfully gotten it to Kentucky.
Yeah.
No problem.
And as you see, if you go through our podcasts every week, we list our numbers, and one of those numbers is international sales. And we break down how many of those sales are global, are global shipping programs, and how many are not. And most of them are global.
Oh, a majority, yeah.
In some weeks, 25% of our sales are overseas.
International, yeah.
So we love selling overseas.
I love selling overseas.
I should just tell people don't sell overseas because then it's a bigger market for us.
Yeah, right. But we're not going to lie to you.
But,
yeah, we like it.
It's good for us. Okay, so that's it for this week. This will go up a little bit late this week, but that's okay.
But then we'll be back on track because we'll be in a stable place for 4 weeks.
The next 4 podcasts will be coming from Amsterdam, Netherlands.
4, it'll be 8 because it's 2 a week.
That's right. The next 8.
It's several. So we'll have lots of Dutch.
And remember, too, we're on this new schedule where we post 1 on Monday, although it's a little late this week, and then 1 on Wednesday.
Yeah.
So we still do 2 podcasts a week. We're just splitting it up to kind of break it all. And then we always do like a question and answer post so people can come on and ask its questions and talk. So,
all right.
Okay.
So thanks for listening.
See ya.
Bye.